The lecture today is on rhetoric. Rhetoric is the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. Rhetoric is also known as the art of persuasion or argumentation. It is the study of written, spoken, or visual language. Rhetoric began in ancient Greece about 2,500 years ago, and it was the study of the forms of communication and argument that were essential to public, political, and legal life. It investigates how language is used to organize and maintain social groups, construct meanings and identities, coordinate behavior, mediate power, produce change, and create knowledge. Rhetoricians often assume that language is constitutive. We shape and are shaped by language. Dialogic. It exists in the shared territory between self and other. Closely connected to thought, so mental activity as inner speech, and integrated with social, cultural, and economic practices. Aristotle's rhetorical concepts, there needs to be an author. So the author is the person communicating. The text is the actual instance or piece of communication. Audience, the recipient of this communication. Purpose, the varied reasons both authors and audiences communicate. And then the setting, the time, place, and environment surrounding a moment of communication. Aristotle also created the modes for persuasion. These three modes are pathos, ethos, logos. Arguments based on emotion are pathos. So pathos is used to build bridges, make logical claims stronger or more memorable. So take a look at these examples of pathos here. All of these ads appeal to the audience's emotions, right? In this first ad here on the left, this is an anti-smoking ad, right? And it shows the effects of secondhand smoke for children, right? So they are using visual and imagery to sort of convince us that smoking is bad, right? And that this is how it's affecting children. So the smoke, as you'll see here, sort of resembles like a plastic bag around the child's head. We see the same here for the Coca-Cola ad, right? All the colors are bright and cheery. It says, open a Coke, open happiness. As you know, the audience or the consumer, we immediately sort of want this product because it invokes a sense of happiness. And then finally here on the right, bicycles don't come with bumpers, give cyclists room to ride. Again, appealing to our emotions, right? This is a horrible image of this girl. She's wearing a helmet. She's a bicyclist and she has tire tread on her face. Arguments based on character is ethos. So three main elements add up to ethos: credibility, authority, and unselfish or clear motives, right? So this is the ethos of the author, the person who is either putting out the ad or the person who's written the text that you're reading. The trustworthiness and credibility speak to a writer's honesty, respect for an audience and its values, and plain old likability. You have every right as a consumer or the reader to ask about the writer's authority. What does he know about the subject? What experiences does she have that make her especially knowledgeable? Why should I pay attention to this person? Motives, it's important to ask, whose interests are they serving? How will they profit from their proposal? These questions are at the heart of ethical arguments. Here are some examples of ethos and ads, right? So we have this right here for Obama, change we can believe in. If you take a look here, it almost looks like Obama is kind of, looking down on us the way that he is framed in this image here. He's also surrounded by white light, so it's almost like this figure that we can look up to that we've been waiting for. This Pepsi ad here, get on your dancing shoes, and it's Beyonce, right? This is an ad for the Super Bowl. But important questions to ask ourselves: what about, seeing Beyonce advertising for a Pepsi ad? What about that makes us as the consumer want to therefore drink Pepsi and choose Pepsi over Coca-Cola? Down here we have a Colgate ad, and again, using ethos by including an image of a dentist, right? Probably not a real dentist, but either way, someone dressed as a dentist. And then down here, it says, I can't read it, but it says it's, being recommended. It's the number one brand being recommended by dentists. And then last but not least, we have I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, and we have Ozzy Osbourne. And I don't know how relevant Ozzy still is. I get, mixed messages on that, but interesting that they chose Ozzy for this product, right? That it's sort of appealing to an older crowd, whereas Beyonce is appealing to a younger crowd. Lastly, logos, and these are arguments based on facts and reason. So logical arguments depend on facts, statistics, surveys and polls, testimonies and narratives, so human experiences, reason and common sense. Now, a syllogism, these are arguments constructed from reason and common sense rather than from hard facts, but syllogisms are still considered logos. So here we have a few examples of either hard evidence or constructed arguments, aka syllogisms, being used. So let's take a look here. So number one, drunk drivers are involved in more than 50% of traffic deaths. Do you think this would be considered a hard evidence or a constructed argument or syllogism? If you guessed hard evidence, you're correct. And I sort of bolded the hint here. But because we have this stat, this 50%, we can assume that some kind of survey was taken to determine this number. Number two, DNA tests of skin found under the victim's fingernails suggest that the defendant was responsible for the assault. Again, this would be considered hard evidence because we are bringing in DNA tests. So these are scientifically proven tests, right? Three, a psychologist testified that teenage violence could not be blamed on video games. So this one's a little tricky, but I would go with hard evidence because we have someone who is a professional in the field, right? That we have a psychologist that is testifying that teenage violence should not be blamed on video games. So we have sort of this expert or professional figure who's coming in and making this statement. Four, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, there's not really any use of statistics here, right? Or any surveys or any numbers being brought into the equation. So this is just an argument. This would be considered a syllogism, right? Because it's an argument that's based on just good reasoning, right? That it sort of assumes that if you're eating an apple a day, you have a fairly healthy lifestyle, right? And that therefore you won't have to go to the doctors often. And then lastly, airbags ought to be removed from vehicles because they can kill young children and small-framed adults. Again, this would be a syllogism because there aren't any numbers included here, right? There hasn't been a survey taken, and the wording too, you have ought to be removed. So it's not this sort of finalized decision, right? It's just someone using their good judgment saying, well, yeah, they should be removed. But there aren't any other like hard facts or numbers or stats being given to us. And here are just some examples of logos. So anytime you see anything that includes like numbers, that's how you know that they're using logos. Again, here they're telling you the 32 mpg highway up to 600 highway miles. All of this constitutes logos. And again, this is for the camera on a phone, right? So it's telling you what kind of camera it has. So again, all logos. All right, and this concludes our rhetoric presentation. I hope that this all makes sense to you and you now have a better understanding of what rhetoric is and how it works.